Welcome to Jets Rewind. I'm Marty Shupak in Valley Cottage, New York, and I'm joined by Ray Clifford, who is in Marysville, Ohio. It is Thursday night. It's November 11th, 2011. We're recording this around 7 p.m. Ray, welcome to our Thursday night podcast. How you doing?
Wonderful here in soggy Ohio.
Of course, most of the podcast will be about Mr. Mike White, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But because Ralph hasn't been on, I still would like to ask a trivia question. It's not a hard question for you, okay?
They're all hard for me.
Yeah, and a lot of it is in reference because we posted an article on Freeman Mcneal at the JetsRewind.com. So it's going to be a running back question. Freeman Mcneal is the second all-time leader in rushing yards. Curtis Martin is number one. I want you to tell me, and try to do it in order. It doesn't have to be, but try to do it. Number 3, 4, and 5. I think you're going to get it. Okay? So you're going to tell me number 3.
You have more faith than I do.
I do. 3, 4, and 5 rushing leaders in Jet history. And you're going to remind me towards the end of the podcast, and we have to go back to that question.
All right.
So you just put on that thinking cap. And while I do a little housekeeping here, the Jets signed defensive safety Elijah Riley. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they signed him off the Philadelphia Eagle practice squad. He is from Army, undrafted. You know, his college stats always look good. Obviously, with Marcus Maye out, there's a need for that position. So we'll see how Mr. Riley does. And also, Conor Mcdermott, you might have forgotten about, offensive lineman. He had hurt his knee, I guess, in the second game. He's back practicing. And we had a Mekhi Becton sighting on the sidelines with the strength coach. So hopefully he's not too far away from coming back. But Ray, everything is I'll tell you one thing that's like, I was thinking about it today, Ray. The Jets fan psychology, we're so hungry for success and a good story that everything now is Mike White mania. It's just I listen to the talk shows. These people are calling up, and I kind of like it. It's nice to have. It's a good story. I think people like Marty Shupak and most of the fan base are getting ahead of themselves. Already I'm comparing him to Tom Brady. He was named the starter for this Sunday. I'd like your feelings, and we'll get into it pretty deep. Ray?
Well, I mean, I think it would have been ridiculous to make Zach a starter, especially after the way he played against Cincinnati, and actually what he played while he was in against Indianapolis, he still looked good. So I think everybody.
Let me just give you a quick interruption. Including that quarter, he's played 5 quarters and thrown for over 500 yards. 4 TDs. Okay, Ray, I'm sorry for the interruption.
Well, yeah, I mean, the stats are all fine, but I think this will be the game that'll tell if he's for real, because I don't think the other two defenses, though they weren't bad. I mean, Indy's D isn't bad and Cincinnati's D isn't bad. Buffalo brings a whole different level in my mind defensively. And so I think this one will show a lot of what he's made of. But as far as him I think him and not him, but you and me and everyone else would have been not just shocked if Zach started, but probably would have been kind of pissed. I mean, I still believe Zach has the talent to be great, possibly, but he's got to learn to corral his whole game. He's got to learn to play a professional game, not a college game. Mike White's had 3 years on practice squads, and that probably is a lot of why he seems a lot more settled out there, is that even though he hasn't been in games, he's been practicing against pros. So I give him that. But, how good he's looked, that was a shocker. I'm interested as anybody else to see what he does. And if he plays good, in my mind, you got to stick with him as long as he's playing like that. You can't switch back to Zach just because he was the number 2 pick. You gotta ride that guy if he's really playing that well.
Ray, I agree with you 100%. I'm a huge Mike White fan from what we've seen. He seems to do well in the Mike LaFleur offense. He seems to get rid of the ball fast. And again, I repeated it the last podcast, he sees the field, which to me is number one in my mind. Again, I'm a little concerned that he stays in the pocket a little too long. He's got to learn to avoid some of that contact. But this was the right decision. It couldn't have been any other decision. And I'll tell you what, you kind of hear whispers that the players around him want him to start. They want him over Zach Wilson. And if you ask any of these veterans about, do they want to develop this young quarterback, or would they rather win with Mike White? They're going to want to win. These guys, They just want to win. There's no question about it. Ray, I just wanted to ask you, the fact that Mike White sat for anywhere from 2 to 3 years, and Mahomes on Kansas City sat for about 80 to 90% of a season. Does this go back to validating the importance of a rookie quarterback sitting rather than pushing him into the starting lineup? Because when myself and Ralph were young, we always heard about a 5-year plan, but that's thrown out the window.
Yeah, that's out the window.
Yeah, but do you think it'll come back where teams will sit the rookie quarterback for at least 1 year?
I don't know, because, I hear all these, and, the word expert is thrown around a little too easily these days. Just because somebody played football doesn't mean they're an expert on every aspect of the game. Or just because they report on it and follow a team doesn't mean they're an expert on football just because they watch it a lot and, and analytics and all that. Personally, I think sitting them doesn't do any harm. And in some cases, I think it's needed. And I think in Zach's case, it was needed. I think it helped Sam by accident when he got hurt. And this is the same thing with Zach. I think it helped Sam his first year. I think it probably helped Mahomes. But then there are guys, and he didn't start right out of the gate, but there are guys I believe that could have, which is Marino. He could have, but he didn't. He sat for, I think, 3 games before he got in there. But Manning started right out of the gate, struggled, but you could still see the talent in Manning. And he was way more under control than Zach was in his start. Zach has to learn pocket presence, and that's what Mike White has. Mike White's not a mobile guy, but he understands that you have a route, but it doesn't mean it has to go to the number 1 read. You don't have to look deep all the time for the home run. He understands the check down. He understands get through your progressions and hit the open guy after, if you don't see what you want to see right away, hit the open guy and let him get what he can. And that is really what Zach has to learn, is that the second and third option are fine if it makes positive yards and keeps a drive going. We don't need a 50-yard gain every, all the time. And I think he's going to have to learn that to become a pro quarterback.
Right. And we spoke about it last podcast. You don't think that the fact that Mike LaFleur is up in the booth really had a huge difference in how the offense is playing right now?
I said I don't know. Maybe, but if it was with Zach in there and he went up there, I'd say yeah, it did. But he also changed quarterbacks at that moment, so I don't know that him being up there I don't know. You'd have to ask him if that affected his play calling. I don't know, but you change quarterbacks, and it could have been as simple as that Mike White kind of gets the system better right now.
Right.
And, so I don't know. And then once he gets rolling, LaFleur gets into a rhythm and calls, I think under Mike White, he's called better plays too. So, the trick plays work better when your offense is, sustaining drives. But when you're doing 3 and outs and then try a trick play, generally it doesn't seem to work as well.
If the Jets lose 28-21, Mike White throws 3 touchdown passes, 290 yards, and 1 or 2 interceptions, does he start the following week if it was up to you?
Up to me, yeah. I mean, if it's that close, unless he, looks bad in the game. I mean, those stats all sound great, but I mean, if he looks like he's not in control during the game, I mean, if drives are if he's making bad reads and bad throws, I don't know, but chances are, yeah, with those numbers, just going based on those numbers, I would. I mean, just because they lost, it isn't going to be a 1-loss thing in my mind as to whether or not he keeps playing. It's going to be, how does he play and how does he control the offense? That's all I'm going to be looking at.
Right. And in the Cincinnati game, he spread the ball around, I think 11 different receivers. I'm not sure if that number is correct. But the one thing I'll tell you, in a lot of the film that I looked at with some of these film gurus, I think I mentioned to you,
yeah,
it was amazing, like the first few games of the year, how many times Elijah Moore was open and Zach just didn't see him. Meanwhile, the last couple of weeks he's getting so much more involved in the offense, which is good to see. And I agree with you. As long as the offense is going forward and we're scoring points, you got to keep him in there. You really do. And we spoke about it earlier in the week. Rich Cimini came out with the figures that if they offer Mike White, I think it was like $1+ million. It's like a 5th round tender. If they go up to, I think it was 2.5 or 2.7, it's a 2nd round tender. Ray, I remember a number of years ago, we didn't tender. I don't know if it was Lavernius Coles or another receiver, only a number 1, and we could have tendered him a number 1 and 3. I think the Jets would be foolish not to tender Mike White with a 2nd round pick, unless he just he just completely implodes. Do you agree with that, or you think I don't know. Where should they go with this guy? I mean,
if he looks good again, yeah. I mean, why would you let him go for was it 5th rounder?
Yeah.
why would you let him out of Dodge for that? If you're gonna, even if you're thinking, well, we're probably gonna let him go and we're gonna ride with Zach, then why not tender him and get what you can? Because if he plays like he has, even maybe not like the Cincinnati game, obviously if he plays that good, they're not letting him go anywhere. They're gonna try and keep him here. But I mean, if he plays solid enough, there are teams out there already going, okay, let's keep our eye on this guy, because they got to get rid of one or the other. So I could see them if he keeps playing like this, I would think it'd be foolish to have it be a 5th round tender.
Yeah. And Ray, one of the things that Robert Saleh preaches is that he's going to give playing time on merit. And with that, I just want to segue into the situation with the backup quarterback. Maybe you could explain to me. I don't understand. They announced that Joe Flacco will be the backup and not Josh Johnson. And I just said that Saleh said playing time will be based on merit. I don't know what else Josh Johnson could do than what he did in that Thursday night game. And I just want to know your feelings about Flacco being the backup.
Well, despite what he said, I mean, because Josh Johnson played, very well, I thought. And I think they're just going with Flacco because one, they gave up a draft pick to get him. They went through all that to get him here. And two, he's got more experience, which, you know, he kind of fits the same mold as Mike White, really, just an older version instead of a younger one. Pocket passer, not real mobile, you know, a lot of experience, knows how, you know, he can, good arm, strong arm, and he knows how to check down and all that. So it might be, they feel like it's like a you know, the same, you know, if White were to go out for some reason, that Flacco coming in would be just like a smooth transition to the next guy in the same mold as Mike White. So it could be as simple as that. But I agree. I don't know what else Josh Johnson's supposed to do to get playing time. He seems, you know, the last preseason game they had, he played really well. And then they bumped him off the team and put him on the practice squad. And so now he comes up after Zach gets hurt and ends up in the game because White goes down and looks good. And he looks like they're going to, you know, at some point when Zach comes back, I'm guessing they'll cut him and try and get him back on the practice squad. But if I'm Josh Johnson, I give some thought as to whether or not I sign with him.
No, I wouldn't. If I was him, I wouldn't sign. And I think it's very unfair to Josh Johnson.
Well, that being said, you know, Josh Adams didn't. I don't know if Josh Adams is hooked on with anybody or not.
I don't think so. And I don't get it.
I don't either. I don't hear his name anywhere.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to look him up. But.
We'll check it out after we're off the air. But you know, in retrospect, you, Ralph, and myself, and a lot of Jeff fans, we actually owe Joe Douglas a little bit of an apology because he did have a backup quarterback in Mike White. And we all said, you have to get a veteran, you have to get a veteran, you have to get a veteran. Now, we wanted a veteran because we didn't know about Mike White's ability, but we also wanted a veteran where Zach Wilson could bounce off different things to him that he couldn't bounce off the coaches. Okay, so with that said, maybe it's not a bad idea having him. I just feel bad. A guy like Josh Johnson has sacrificed like 12, 13 years of his life. And look, he's never going to win MVP in this league or lead the league in passing, but this guy has been through the ropes. If you look at the number of teams and number of leagues he's played in, I just like a good story where the guy hangs around and, you know, he actually makes it a career. So I feel bad for him, but Ray, it is what it is. We're going, and I'm assuming that this is going to be the setup. It's going to be Mike White, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson won't be activated, and Josh Johnson, I don't know what they're going to do with him, how that works with these new rules with the practice squad, because I know it was expanded, you know, for the COVID. So I don't know what's going to happen. By the way, speaking of COVID, I forgot to mention that Denzel Mims, which is old news, is on the COVID list. So we'll have to see what happens. And related to that, Corey Davis is back at practice from his bad hip, and he said he's good to go. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty good news. And again, I'm not huge on Corey Davis. I have to see some more consistency from him, but we'll see what happens this week. Ray, the holes that they're opening up against our defensive line, I mean, you could put a Mack truck through. Is our defensive line overrated?
I think they played a little over their head earlier in the year, but I still think that's a good group. Indianapolis has some good linemen. Let's face it, they were running behind. But I'd like to see them show a little bit more of what they did earlier in the year with, you know, a little bit of pressure out of Franklin Myers, stuff the run. We were good against the run early on, but the last, I don't know that Cincinnati ran on us a whole lot, but Indianapolis that was stunning how easily they ran on us. And if we let the Bills do that, it's going to be a long day, because then they can do whatever they want. And their receivers are, let's face it, Indy didn't even have their best receivers and they threw it all over us. They'll have they'll have a field day in the air. Buffalo will if they run on that, on us like that. Although, didn't their running back have COVID or get hurt or something? One of their running backs, Buffalo's.
Somebody is. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's.
I don't know if it was COVID or an injury, but one of the running backs may not play.
Yeah, which we'll have to see. The latest update is probably going to come out tomorrow, and they're a tough team. Let's get into the Bills right now with Josh Allen at quarterback, Zach Moss at running back, and I think he's questionable. They list him as questionable. Their receivers are tough. Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, and Cole Beasley, he's also questionable. Their tight end, Dawson Knox, is good. And they have a pretty formidable offensive line. They have the center who I wanted the Jets to get 3 years ago, Mitch Morse. He's a solid player. And their right guard is Darrell Williams. But for the Jets and for the success of Mike White, it's all going to come down to their defense with the Bills. And, a player that stands out, Ray, is this Ed Oliver, who's a heck of a defensive lineman. Ralph and I wanted him over Quinn Williams, which in retrospect, I'm glad we didn't get him.
Yeah, I don't think he's that good.
Yeah.
I think he's good, but he's not that good.
But they have stars like up and down. Jerry Hughes, the defensive end, Matt Milano, the linebacker, and I think it is Micah Hyde, the safety, is an excellent player.
Yeah.
They're solid left and right, and the coach is McDermott, I believe, right?
Yeah, Sean McDermott.
He's a solid coach. I can't explain them scoring only 3 points against Jacksonville. I don't know if you saw any of the game.
I think they scored 6, Marty. Let's not shortchange them. I think it was 9-6.
Oh, 9-6.
I think the game was 9-6. But no, that was, I took them in my parlay. Okay. And that's probably why they only scored 6, because they knew I took them. So they have a knack. I have a knack for doing that. But I don't know how to explain that game at all. I mean, I think Jacksonville's D is pretty good, but it is not that good. And and that's another thing that worries me about this week is Buffalo's going to look to right the ship against us. So
yeah, there's a lot of anger out there, and let's see what happens. Hopefully, it's more like the Bengals than it is other teams. The Bengals coming off a loss against the Jets, and they got wiped off the map against Cleveland.
Yeah.
Ray, Marcus Maye, our third player to go down with a ruptured Achilles. In your opinion, do you think he's played his last game as a New York Jet?
My guess would be yeah. Partly because of the injury, just probably sealed it. But between the trouble he's going to have, legal trouble he's going to have in Florida, just doesn't look good. So I'm guessing by next year he'll be suspended for a good part of it anyway. But that injury is going to make him a lot less draw a lot less interest on the free agent market. So I think that injury and the legal troubles is going to cost him quite a bit of money between the two. He's going to, I would say he'll be a free agent, and because I think after the season, the league will decide. I think he'll be suspended for, 4 to 6 games at least, depending on what the outcome of his legal thing is. And then I think he'll have to play like a prove it year, what's left of the year with somebody. Well, and I don't think it'll be us.
Yeah. That was my question. Could the Jets have actually lucked out where maybe, I mean, if Marcus Maye's agent said, look, we're willing to sign, let's say he goes through all the physicals and he's 100%, but his agent says, we're willing to sign a 1-year show me contract for $5 million. Would the Jets do it?
I'm not going to say they wouldn't. I mean, that's something that they'd have to discuss, but I think they're ready to move on. Now, if they get somebody in the draft, or if Ashton Davis continues to, improve, a lot of people gripe about Ashton Davis. I think he's I think he's coming along. I think he's getting there. I don't, I'm waiting to see if he, continues to grow. If he continues, you know, the to grow and become a solid guy back there, I can't see him bringing in a guy to start over. Just kind of like with the draft and all the young DBs and then not bringing in a vet. He said they don't learn by watching. Well, if Dashin Davis is playing good enough to start, I think he'll be there. And I just don't see him bringing back Marcus Maye for that. But it's up to them. Money talks too.
Yeah, the biggest complaint that Jet fans have about Ashton Davis that I've read, his angles of pursuit have been awful when he's in there. I happen to think I agree with you though. I think there's something there. He's got to improve though from the way he's.
Yeah, he does.
Now, with that said, I think they have to move on from Marcus Maye. I think this guy has been overrated. I don't think he's that good of a football player, as good as he thinks he is, to be very honest with you. I think he's pedestrian, average at best. I don't think he's anything special. So if I was them, I would move on. They have, in the first 2 rounds, the 4 picks. I hear some tremendous things about Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. Whether the Jets would pick him that early, I'm not sure, because we also hear that they might go for this Linderman offensive lineman. So it's a matter of who's available and, again, about when they're picking. So we'll have to see. Again, it's a challenge for Joe Douglas and a challenge for, most general managers in the league, but we'll have to see what happens. Ray, we wrote an article this week about Freeman Mcneal. And I really like this guy, and a number of reasons. He was not the type of player that really could give you like one of those 40, 50, or 60-yard runs. Once in a while, he would break it for a nice run. But the way he hit the hole was terrific. For like gaining like between like 7 and 15 yards, I really love this guy, and I thought he was great out of the backfield. What's your biggest memory, your best memory of Freeman Mcneal? And I just want to tell the audience that if you go to our jetsrewind.com website, we wrote a nice article on Freeman Mcneal, just refreshing our memories and going through a little bit of a history, what he did for the Jets. Ray, what's your best memory of him?
Well, my best memory, which I was a big fan of his coming out of college. I remember him at UCLA, and I was really happy when the Jets took him, and he was better than I thought he'd be. But I always liked his style, not real flashy. That's why I like Curtis Martin in a lot of ways. Curtis wasn't this pound his chest guy. Curtis was just kind of did his job, and that's how he is or was. My favorite memory was probably the Cincinnati Bengal playoff game when he sewed it up with a nice run late in the game that just kind of sealed the win. That would have been my second favorite, except the next week against Cleveland, he did basically the same thing with a little under 5 minutes left. He ran in a 25-yarder, gave us a 10-point lead, and then on 4th, and I think it was forever, Mark Gastineau gave a roughing the passer to Kozar, and from that point on, we couldn't stop him. When he scored that, I thought we were on our way to the championship game. But
was 2 different years, though.
It was. That's right. Yeah. It was.
But then the week after, and by the way, the Cincinnati game was my favorite. For you younger Jet fans, he rushed for over 200 yards, and under the radar is something that people forget. The Jets were losing that game, and he ended up throwing an option pass to Derek Gaffney for a touchdown. It kind of changed the momentum of that game. He ended up scoring a 20-yard touchdown run, I believe it was, and it just went on. And
20-something yards.
Yeah.
I forgot. The next week was the Miami debacle, right?
No, next week they went to Oakland.
Oh, L.A.
And he had another good game, rushing for over 100 yards.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was because of those 2 games, he was a big part of the reason your favorite coach, Don Shula,
Yeah.
left the field in the Orange Bowl uncovered.
Yeah.
It got swamped because
Oops.
the Jets were a quick team, and as we said in the article, they were better than Miami, and if they beat
Oh,
Miami,
yeah.
I think they would have won the Super Bowl against Washington. So it was a sour taste for all Jet fans, but I just don't want to. I don't want to overlook how good Freeman Mcneal was. He was a solid
He was
pro,
outstanding. Yeah.
outstanding pro, and he was a very, very good blocker. The one negative is he did fumble a little too much, but besides that, I mean, he was terrific. He really was. Ray, we're going to close this up, but let's get back to the trivia question. Speaking of Freeman Mcneal, I told you that he's second on the all-time list of rushers behind Curtis Martin. I want you to tell me who 3, 4, and 5 are. Try to do it in the right order, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm not going to be able to. I can only think of two names, and I was racking my brain for who another one would be. But did Thomas Jones make it in there?
No.
No.
Yes, no, one more year, good year, he probably would have, but he didn't. But go ahead.
I have no Matt Snell.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
number 4.
Okay.
If you got Matt Snell 4, you should get another one.
Emerson Boozer.
Yeah, he's number 3. Emerson
Yeah.
had 5,000.
Emerson played a little longer. That's part of why.
Right. He was one of my favorite all-time Jets. 5,135 yards. Matt's now 4,285 yards. And just 5 yards behind Matt's now, 4,280. A player.
Don't say Sean Green.
No, Johnny Hector.
I was trying to think if it was one of the guys like Roger Vick, or I couldn't think of who all played back then, because we had, back in those same years, basically when we had the good defense and we had a solid offense, we had a good running attack several of those years, not just with Mcneil, but we had a few years that as a team we led the league, but I didn't know if any one guy stood out.
Yeah, which was good. And I always look upon Emerson Boozer when he hurt his knee, and didn't have modern medicine. I mean, in the same breath, they would talk about him with Gale Sayers. If you looked at Emerson Boozer, I wish you could see a film.
Yeah,
he was injured. He had moves which were unbelievable. Ray, before we close it out, I want to do a shout out to a gentleman, big Jet fan, a UPS driver in Rockland County, Nanuet, Aldo. I met him, and he loves listening to sports radio, and he's a big fan of our podcast. So Aldo, there's a shout out to you. Ray, any closing thoughts now on the Bills game? Do we have a chance to win?
Well, I'm going to keep hoping that my good fortune of jinxing everything works and say, just like the Cincinnati game, no, I don't think we do. But I think if we're going to have any chance, we have to A, stop the run, and B, Mike White has to be just about as good, if not better, than he was against Cincinnati. That's our only hope. And so Buffalo's tough. They're coming off a tough loss. They're, well, they talk about New England being a game behind them, but I don't consider New England really a threat to them unless Buffalo implodes, which I don't think they will. But I think I was hoping they would kill Jacksonville and come in real cocky, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, I predicted the Jets were going to beat Cincinnati, and I was right. I was. I didn't.
I know you were. You did.
I did. And I'm going to predict they're going to beat Buffalo. The Mike White legend continues. It's going to be 23-16. He's going to throw 2 touchdown passes. Michael Carter's going to have a nice run. They're going to get a safety, and it's going to be
getting specific now.
John Franklin Myers is going to get Josh Allen, and he's going to throw him for a safety, and he's going to come back on the radar. Okay, for Ray.
One quick thing about that: if we hold them to 16 points, I'll agree with you. We'll win.
There you go. And look, they were held to 6 points, right? And
I know.
so,
I know. I mean, it shocked me, but if we can hold them to 16, I think we've got a serious shot at winning.
okay. For Ray Clifford in Marysville, Ohio, and Marty Shupak in Valley Cottage, New York, hey, please check out our website, jetsrewind.com. And if you're on our YouTube channel, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a good review if you can. If you can't, I don't want you to review us. All right. We'll be on the air probably Sunday night after the Jets and Mike White beat the Buffalo Bills. Until next time.